welcome everyone to Squadron's Esports Federation presentation of the SCL Season 8 playoff previews. Yes, I know my videos are all screwed up. I didn't get a chance to fix it, but I'll do it in a second. And I know my emotes are off. I will turn that on in a little bit as soon as I get a chance. Tonight, we are going to do a preview of the Season 8 playoffs, both Challenger and Champions Division. And joining me from Niwi Siren is Ska, from Backstreet Boys is Rod, and from Hive Guard is Maze. Thank you guys for being here tonight. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you guys could be here to join me. I guess before we start, any quick thoughts on this season and how you felt about it? Probably starting with you, Scott.
I mean, our team had a phenomenal season so far. We're gonna crash and burn in the playoffs, but I loved it. I mean, I love the mod set. I love the different strategies. I think it was just a good season all around.
Cool. How about you, Rod? Any quick thoughts about this season?
It's been a fun season. I guess, as a team, it's going how I expected it, and yeah, I'm just happy to be here and that we're still playing the game, and there's some people still playing.
I know what you mean. I think we're going to cover this a little bit during the talks. But I think to your point that we as a group, I think some teams have had struggles this season because of real life affecting quality of play, right? So I agreed. I'm glad that we got to season 8. Hopefully season 9 will exist. I mean, I'm going to be around, but I'm hoping we keep going. And Maze, your thoughts on this season before we begin?
Yeah, it's been a good one. When I look at the top of the ladder, it seems like maybe this season more than ever, there's some possibility for somebody to maybe dethrone Tempest or Tempesta or its various versions. It seems like we're still very much in the Tempest era of SCL, but maybe this season there's some rising teams. If you look at how Baywatch is playing right now, just lights out. And of course, usual suspects like Savrip, now Savrip Prime, and maybe a few others in the mix.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, why don't we get into it? Get into how each team did, and we'll take a look at the Challenger Division first and the playoffs. We'll read through the comments, so definitely, guys, keep talking it up. I'm already seeing talks of us killing the game. So we'll see how this goes. Let's start. First off, I'd like to thank Ska for actually putting together a PowerPoint for us tonight. I wasn't expecting that. I was gonna probably crunch through a bunch of stuff, but he was kind enough to put a PowerPoint. So let us go through this. Start with the Challengers tournament. Let me make sure that you guys are saying, yep, good. It works as I expected. So the 8 teams entering the Challengers bracket: Orange Squad, Laser Rangers, Kenton Striders, CA Jade, Niwi Crone, TRA Rebel Yell, CA Venom, and the Krellin Somniers. They make up this year's and the first Challenger bracket playoff. I think this will be an interesting turnout. But why don't we go through the teams in somewhat reverse order of their positioning? I know that it's not exactly as stated, but we'll go through it. We'll start with TRA Rebel Yell. They started with a very rough first and second round. I think, they did not pick up any points. They were struggling a bit. They're a newer team to the league. But they finally started to show some promise in round 3, picking up a point against that was Laser Rangers. So hopefully their experience that they picked up this season can possibly lead to an upset. I mean, they do have to face Niwi Crone, which is number 2 seed, so it might be tough for them. And looking at it, the big player to watch here was probably Roxy. She came out from her division with 11.63 KDA. Is that? Yeah, it's KDA. Over
No,
6 innings.
averaging during the game, so I don't think it's KDA. Just kills per game.
Kills per game. Well, that's still pretty impressive.
Pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I know Rebel Yell is an old team in terms of existing, but this is really a lot of them first time in SCL. Some of them are veterans. Any thoughts on their season and maybe their chances against Crone or in this playoff in general?
I'm not super familiar with their roster, but it makes sense that towards the end of the season they would start kind of coming together. I remember my first season in SCL. was a bit of a shock, because this is not like ranked. You got to play things, in a more disciplined way. Team has to be more cohesive. So there's a lot of things you kind of have to learn by playing against other SCL teams. So maybe they're coming together at the right time.
And I think, I think cohesiveness and upward trend is very big in this game, right? I'm probably gonna say the same thing with some other teams, but finding that positive motivation, gelling right before the playoffs is probably the right time. I think an upset of Crone might be a tall order for them, but maybe they steal a game from them and push Crone to 3 games. That might be interesting to see.
Yeah, and one thing to watch, I think, is I believe Roxy was having some equipment issues in the middle of the season. I don't know if she's back yet, and she's clearly a key member of the team. So that might just be something to keep an eye out for, whether she flies or not in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, and I think that's gonna be a story for a lot of teams. So you're right, especially if she's the one cranking out the kills at this level, especially in the challenge division. Killing, dogfighting tends to actually influence the games a lot.
Hmm.
And especially for one of the teams in this division, it's been their bread and butter, right? So we'll see how that goes. Anyone any thoughts on Rebel Yell before we move on to our next team? Hey, if oh sorry. Okay, if not, let's go to the next team. Uh Lucky Sabak Shift, the Krillian Sommeliers. I think it's a combination of both of those teams coming together for their first season together in SCL. They're both of these teams are kind of, I want to say old guard, but they have played in the Calrissian Cups before. They weren't expected to do much as well, but they have performed pretty admirably, picking up 4 points in round one, 3 points in round two, excuse me, and 4 points in round three. Um, and in this last division, they actually took a game off of Kenton Striders and Cameron's Jade, which is a bit of a shock for them, for everyone to have watched. So they have a very positive upward trend going in. They have a very solid team, and David PL has been their top PK player. But I think more so to watch has been Dathka, who has improved vastly this season. And in some cases, one could argue that he's single-handedly won some games for them. Guys, thoughts on the sommeliers this season?
Yeah, Dathka is insane for being in like one of the lower tiers. He has got like top tier plasburst orbits. It's pretty crazy. He's very good at PKing plasburst, whatever you want. He's great.
Yeah, and I think also his PK ability has improved, and especially because one of the games came off of us. Uh, he was able to put a lot of pressure, especially on me. Like he was able to identify me as a key player to ice out, to slow down the Kinton attack, and put a lot of pressure on me, picking up 2 kills on me, and then picking up a couple kills on some of my fellow pilots, and really was able to stuff our ISD shield gen runs, which led them to take the game off of us. And I'm assuming, having seen Delphin other plays, that again, him putting on those iron dunks, allowing David PL to come in and kill, or allowing the bombers to come in and kill, because they've run some interesting lineups, like a 1-3-1 where Dathka just is doing a lot of the PK, but then the bombers come in, converge on their target, and get the kill, and then go back to their jobs. And like I said before, in this half of the bracket, those kills really open up the game for some of these teams and allow them to have extended attack phases when you're not expecting that. And that really is helpful for the sommeliers. I think,
Hmm.
especially because they're playing Venom Red. That's gonna be a bloodbath kind of game,
That's gonna
and
be a bloodbath.
yeah, they like, and especially because Venom, and we'll talk about a little bit later. Venom doesn't also plays a little bit off meta. Some of these have to probably find their rhythm there, steal that game, and then possibly take it to the next bloodbath game, which might be against Crone. So I think some of these are in the right half of the bracket for their style of play to possibly work.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this match. It's going to be great. We'll get more into the matchups in a bit, but just having the PK presence and having somebody who can just pump out a ton of OBJ is important. And I think overall will be an asset against a bloodthirsty team like Venom if they can keep up a little bit and also just put out a good amount of DPS. We'll see how Dathka survives against that sort of pressure, though.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Especially because the Plasburst itself brings a lot of off damage, and in the Empire game, that really very effective for them. And again, it showed against us that they were able to come back from an opening loss. We were very quick on taking their midships, but then we just kept flubbing our IC shield gens because of the massive pressure from Dathka. And then with his plasmas to come back in, he actually out of phased the MC. I think it was from 15 all by himself, thus winning the game. Right. So
Oh,
that plasburst ability, I think, is a game changer for a team at this level because not many other teams in this division have that, and he's a hard target to kill, right? So I agree with you. I think the Somnies have an X factor, so teams will have to watch out for them because they're not an easy team to beat. They're not an easy team to play. They just have to be effective against the Somniers.
right, right.
Anyone else? Any thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I think they have a strong, looks like a strong flex pair with David with the strong PK numbers. Dothka, obviously, we've been talking about. Fundamentally very strong, great power management. But I think they're going to need some balance, right? Their supporting cast is going to have to come through because like a PK heavy approach is not going to work against all of these teams in this bracket. Even on their side of the bracket, they've got Crone, right? Which has some talented players, some hard to kill players on that roster. So they're going to have to seek some balance and have a good defensive farm and that kind of thing in order to have a chance against all these teams.
Yeah, I agree, especially in maps like Nadiri and Galatan, right? It's gonna the farm is gonna be the game story there. And actually, just to add to your point about them being being a top pair, David is actually top 3 in kills a game, and Deathka's top 6 in kills a game. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Like they should lean into it, but they should definitely not let the other half of the game fall apart just because they can put the pressure on.
Yeah, we'll see how players like Patty Batman and Schneeflockchen do as well on that team. I think they're pretty key.
Yep, agreed. Okay, so let's move on to the next team here. Cameron Angels Jade, returning team from last season where they first started. I think a lot of discussion in the community because this team came about of a lot of older solo queue players who came together, wanted to play in SCL. Their first season a little rough. They eventually got their first win, and then this season they came back stronger and did a lot better, getting 4 points in rounds 1 and 2, and then getting 6 points in round 3, having a very strong season. UJZ, I said that wrong, didn't I? UJ, doing amazing stuff in with this flex play and improving. But I think the story with this team is definitely Dan Wookie Cheeks. He has risen as a very strong support and the backbone of this team. They aren't an easy team to play against because they play the matter pretty tightly. They're not easy to kill. I think it's a matter about running them. Thoughts on coming into the Jade season and what they need to do to succeed in this playoffs, guys?
Well, I don't know if Jay is still running the Ion Primaries X-Wing. I think he's very good at it, but I think it's a weak point because it was one of their own. I think the only Ions that carried on the team. And secondly, like Jay's really good at blowing people up and hitting people with the Ion Primaries in that role. Kind of feels like punching with big fluffy gloves on. So we'll see how that goes. I know they have a pretty good strategy overall. I think their support runs standards too, but that was a month ago or so. So maybe they've moved on, maybe they've perfected the strat a little bit.
Yeah,
I think on these,
go ahead.
like on this bracket, these in terms of what these teams should focus on, it's like cleaning up like the most unforced errors because at these divisions there tends to be lots of deaths, a lot of it from PK, a lot of it from pilot errors. I think for all these teams, including Jade, they just need to focus on avoiding like the easiest ways that you give advantages to the other team. Um, like I know they want to think about strategy and stuff a lot, but a lot of it is just cleaning up your individual play, making sure you're doing the basic stuff well, and leaning into whatever you have an advantage on right now. It could be you have one player that's getting a lot of kills and so on, but like it's mostly going to just come down to like, are you avoiding deaths at the wrong times? That's like the biggest at all levels. That's usually the biggest factor in a game.
Yeah, and absolutely right, especially because as we like the last two teams alone, you said that PK is very strong, and then also Crone is a very strong PK team here, and they are lucky to be in the upper bracket where it's probably more objective heavy teams, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that you're right. Giving up bad deaths at the wrong time hurts. And looking at the stats from this team, Viger Lucid actually is averaging 92,000 capture damage a game. He's the top SCL player stat right now. Shoot the glass. Uh, Again, one of those old solo queue guys coming in. He's averaging almost 80,000 capture damage a game. And then they have some here which are in the 60 and 70. Like this team apparently is showing some strong objective damage from their bomber play. So like you said, the bombers have to stay alive to do this damage against teams that are probably going to focus on putting away the bombers so that this damage doesn't come in, right? And I agree with you. Go ahead, sorry.
So, so I don't want to. I don't want to say the stats are like not useful at all, but you should not lean into them too much about things players do, because I notice with like a lot of the, uh, I guess outside of the top, say 6 teams, a lot of times like players will do offensive PK, so they're not
Yeah.
doing capture damage, and so the way this translates is like the whoever is doing objective does more of the cap ship, a larger share of it, and the flexes PKing extend the phase.
Yeah.
And so this skews some of the stats. Like it'll look like, oh, the flexes aren't doing objective and the farmers are the big hitters, but it's really just a choice of how like the teams choose to play. Um, so like I said, it just is going to come down to like, how good are you doing the basic things? Because some small details probably won't matter in these games when it's like, oh, 3 of you died trying to take down a shield gen, and that like stuff like that is, you know, what's going to decide these games. So like I would recommend to these teams that are practicing for playoffs, like especially for flagship attacks, focus on that. Make sure you can dunk gens cleanly. Make sure you can do it without like taking too many deaths. Um, and then like um, on on the open, I guess was the other focus is try to make sure your farmers can get 1 or 2 packs on the open, and then try to avoid deaths on the open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know. I from the chat. Like Niwi does offensive PK.
Yeah, I was
Beck
about to
does
comment
too.
on that. We'll get to those guys up there.
We've never done
Calm
do it
offensive.
down.
too.
What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Calm down, Niwi. We'll get to you guys in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to teams that do that, and Beck does a decent amount of offensive PK too.
Yeah.
But it's not to the extent that like I've seen from some of these players, where I'll see a flex with like 1,000 capship damage in some games. Like that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like that type of stuff changes the stats. So I don't want teams to like
Yeah.
overlook at, oh, look how good this one player is doing, when it's just a choice that their teammate of like how they play.
Yeah, I
Um,
absolutely agree with you. Right? I mean, it's more of like for me, it's more of a surprising stat to see because when you, especially in these lower teams, you don't think about them playing the objective meta, right? It's more like you said, it's more a game of attrition for some of that's through some of these games, especially when watching them. But then again shocked to see that a lot of high damage come out. But you're right, we didn't look at the deaths, we didn't look at the effectiveness of that captive damage, right? Even your comments about the open. Is very true at a higher level, but at this level, I need to go through it with DeGreen, who was nice enough to do the stats for us. But I don't think the translation of winning the Open actually leads to winning the game at this lower level, simply because some of these teams have 2-3 minute offenses, which is unheard of in the top echelons of the league, right? 2-3 minute offenses is a loss for the team defending, unless it's Nigeria, obviously. But that's just, it's too long to give the opposing team damage time. But here, it's not necessarily a death sentence, simply because as the rest of their defensive phases are efficient for whatever reason, then they can come back in the game, especially because burning the cap ship, taking the shields down at this level isn't as quick or efficient as at the top level, right? So I mean, you're right, but I also think that there's something to be said about what they're capable of doing with the time they're given, right? And especially for these last 3 teams, your point stands. They need to make sure they mitigate their deaths and that they do their jobs effectively before they die, essentially, because it's very hard. We see a lot more deaths in this half of the division than we do see at the top, right? So I mean, that's really the difference between what happens here. Let's actually go to the next slide while we continue this discussion, because I think this is a good discussion, Rod. I think
Yeah.
your point stands that they need to be aware of this, but in the same instance, it's a little bit different in how the outcome occurs because there is obviously a skill gap between a lot of these teams, and the skill gap has to be mitigated for some of these teams to win, right? And the Somniers, I think in particular, with a player like Dafka, is able to bridge the skill gap as long as his team is able to not give up bad opportunities. And I think the same is true for Jade, as you just said. Jade has to not give up bad deaths because they're capable of doing the work, but they can't let the pressure of the playoffs get to them and lead to bad games, essentially. And another team that is like that is the Laser Rangers, who are coming up here. Let's bring up a highlight of them and continue the discussion. Old team have been in Cal Cup and SCL for a long time now. Very, very tough season for them. 3 points in round 1, 4 points in round 2, but in round 3, where they were finished in D, they only picked up 2 points, had a very tough run. They are, again, an old team. They have the experience to run through. Pilot to watch here, Altador, great improvement this season. Support. Has one of the best supportive moms in the community. But I think the
That's
Laser
key.
Rangers are an experienced team, right? That's and of the bottom 4 teams we just talked about, I think Laser Rangers experience is something that gives them a delta over everyone. But they need, just like Rod said, they have to make sure that they don't give up bad deaths or make play mistakes against some of their teams that they're playing. And they have the toughest outset here because other than Crone, Orange is a tough team, and they're facing Orange in the first round here. Guys, thoughts on Laser Rangers and what they need to do in order to steal something from Orange here?
Yeah, I mean, Laser Rangers, I think, has they've flown together for a bunch of seasons now with a pretty consistent lineup. I mean, a few people in and out, but still a pretty consistent lineup. And I think they should lean into that. What I'd like to see more of is, I think sometimes maybe they get a little bit flustered on defense and don't farm as hard as they could, or they start, they get like 2 or 3 AI, and then you get 2 back, and you get this like cycle of like not hitting enough AI fast enough. I mean, because they have good players who know what they're doing, but I do think they just need to just hunker down, focus a little bit more on defense, and then like let Patriot go off on the PK because he's great at it. I don't know. They've got the pieces to. I don't know. Taking down Orange is extremely hard. They're gonna have to figure something out there. But I do think that they can do something, and they're not. I wouldn't count them out here. I think that with the server lag and the experience they have together, as long as if the chips fall a little bit right, they might be able to do this to win to advance.
I kind of agree with you. I think map selection will be a key part for them, uh, because I the feeling is Orange is probably going to pick side, going to pick faction because of the lag differential, or maybe Orange goes with a map selection, but they need to use their experience here to play to their advantage, be very smart about it. And like you said, they actually have a pretty decent PK core. I wouldn't say it's the best in the division, but they put a lot of pressure. But on the flip side, their bombers definitely have to be focused, like you said. And even for me, casting some of their games and watching, they can get bloodthirsty and give up time because they're not farming, right? And this is something that they have to be mindful of, especially against a team like Orange. Orange is a very efficient team, and you have to get Orange off the game in order to beat them. Otherwise, they're going to steamroll you, essentially.
Yeah, this is tough matchup for Laser Rangers. I like these guys. It's been fun to see them getting better. They're well coached. I know they've had Power Paladin kind of as their coach, and they're playing, something pretty close to meta. I've seen a couple of double support loadouts and stuff from these guys, so they're mixing it up a bit. But among the lower level teams, they seem to be one of the most disciplined. But Orange is a tough draw. The only reason Orange is in this bracket, I think, is because they really kind of underachieved hard this season. But they're a very tough group. They're certainly a team that we feared in some ways, and we were lucky to come away with wins against them this season up in Group B. So yeah, really tough draw. Hopefully Laser Rangers can make this competitive. And at the very least, make a learning experience and try to pick up some stuff from some of these very good players on OSQ.
Agreed. Anyone else? Any thoughts on this? If not, let's move on to I think more of the bubble teams here, starting with the Kinton Striders. Definitely had some roster adjustments. I had come down from Cyber Squadron due to the Cyber Prime merger. Uh, Very tough season for us. Looking over here, all right, round one, only 1 point. Round two, 2 points. Much stronger. Round three, turned around with 5 points. Tough draw in the last game against Red. We had two disconnects, and that led to us basically losing that game. But then we came back and won the Empire game. The has to go in the playoffs is kind of a personal note for me. I think the team needs to definitely play to their ability. All season they definitely haven't played to the level of skill that I personally know that they are capable of. But the player to watch here, I think, is Medic. Medic this season has shown that he has risen to possibly a top tier support, very much driving the game forward for the Striders, making great shot calls. Um, the Striders will be playing CA Jade, and they're in the orange bracket. So in a way, I think the Striders have a good path, possibly the finals, but they have to do the job against Jade by playing to their ability and then being smart again with their strategy against Orange and trying to find their advantages. Guys, thoughts on the Striders and what they can need to do to win this playoffs?
Yeah, I think. I mean, Orange is the clear favorite, obviously, and then it's Crone and Kintan Striders. I just y'all should be able to beat anybody, but also sometimes you lose to anybody, and I don't know which Striders we're gonna see show up. I hope it's the good kind, because you can be your team that in my mind should be competing at like C get into B tier, maybe be a group B, maybe beyond, like a bunch of really good pilots all playing together, and you're pretty coordinated and know what you're doing. So, I don't know. What do you think?
For me, I think, and this goes to a comment I made earlier. I think we're one of those teams that suffered from real life, just not enough
Mm,
practice. The practice this season, I would say we kind of went back to basics. We noticed things at the end of last season and scrims in the off season we need to fix, so we try to focus on fixing a lot of that stuff. But in the same instance, I think the quality of our scrims wasn't to the level we flew last season, excuse me. Um, and that mentally, in a way, as the season started off rough, it kind of snowballed, right? That negativity kind of snowballed, and teams in that instance, and a team I'm going to talk about later, like CA Thunder, instead of letting it get to them, they just practice harder, right? We because of life didn't, and I think that kind of affected us. But in the same instance, I agree with you. The talent is there. My hope is that we will buckle down. I hope we take Jade seriously. I'm taking Jade seriously. I hope we take Jade seriously. We have to 2-0 them. We have to come up strong, and we have to come into the orange match looking like that Group B, that team that came up upset that upset Niwi and got into the quarterfinals last season, right? We had to be that team, and I want to be that team. I'm just hoping that mentally we can be that team in Jade, and then in most likely Orange in our head to head. Anyone other thoughts on this?
So for me, Kenton, like I guess if Orange weren't in this bracket, I might pick Kenton to go to the final and win the whole thing. But yeah, like a lot of the things you've been saying, I agree with as far as like where Kenton is right now as a team. They have a strong roster. Um, I think maybe some of the things that are holding them back right now are, like you said, lack of practice time. I think maybe there's some individual player mechanics in some cases that are leading to the kinds of unforced errors or deaths that Rod was talking about a bit ago.
Absolutely.
And then I noticed that at times, like comms will kind of go off the rails, and decision making will not be as optimal. And I think that's that combination of factors is what's causing Kenton to drop games that they probably shouldn't lose.
No, I think that's good insight. I hopefully they clean up their play, right? I mean, and speaking as a caster, the team is capable. But you're right, definitely. they need to be focused and be sharper in the actual game speed stuff, right? Because then that leads to I think all the other confidence issues that's having Kinton. But we'll see what happens. They have Jade this Friday. They should win 2-0. They have to win 2-0 to really make a statement coming into a possible orange matchup. But Jade is a tough team, so we'll see what happens. Let's move on to the third team, Cavern Angels Red Venom. They had an incredible season, actually, getting 6 points in round 1, 6 points in round 2, and then 5 points in round 3. That's almost a perfect season from them. Well, in terms of getting points, because I think they play less games. I'm trying to remember if they only play 3 or 4 games in a round.
I think they played 3 because their record has 9 total games.
Yeah, I was trying to look this really quickly. Yeah, so only dropping basically 1 game to Kinton in their entire playthrough. So they oh no, sorry, wait, 6 points doesn't they need 9 points. So yeah, they only dropped a handful of games. Very strong record. This is a team that has been together for a while. Kind of went from CTX to Cavern Angels, was kind of lost in the desert for a little bit in terms of roster setup and strategy. But this season, I think they kind of found their flow in being kind of that PK bloodbath team. Some people question their decision not to run support in some games, but it's worked, right? It's worked for them. And then one of the players to watch here, Golly P, is just popping off as that bomber murderer, right? So Cat Rangers Red is one of those off-meta teams that might shock people if they're not ready and focused. Guys, thoughts on what they need to do to win their first matchup and then the playoffs?
Yeah, this is an interesting team because, like you said, they thrive on disruption, and they do a lot of kind of weird stuff. No support, but in the background they have a guy named Corbalt who's actually playing like a very meta version of OBJ, and really that's sort of carrying them through a lot of these wild games. Like if you look at Corbalt's numbers, he's putting in the OBJ, he's putting in the farm, like he's getting the things done. And they have a few other players that are contributing in that regard as well. So they're sort of doing the things while they're not doing the things. Kind of a weird team. But yeah, they definitely depend on the other team kind of falling apart against them. But they contribute to that, with their PK.
So I'm actually look up his AI stats while you were talking. Yeah, no, I mean I agree. That was kind of like the X factor that they needed because a lot of these guys came from that dogfight background, right? And last season they tried to run meta. They were struggling with it. They just couldn't find their groove. And then this season they decide to drop the support at least on Empire and see what they can get away with, and it's worked to their advantage. But their first round matchup is against the Sommeliers, and I think that's a tough one for them to run their PK strat. I think those guys split this season. I need to look it up. So they need to definitely mitigate their deaths against the Sommeliers because the Sommeliers will push through hard. And if they do win that game, they're gonna go up against Corone, which will be a very tough PK team. So without the support, it becomes a bit of a question mark, especially with the amount of bombers they run in their lineup.
And they're playing with fire to try to like play a disruptive game against another heavy PK team because it's sort of a coin flip at that point.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, thoughts.
Yeah, we'll see if their PKers can slow down Dathka. I have my doubts, but I could be wrong. The other thing I wanted to highlight is with Corbalt and with Lucid on Jade, we have these Vader's Risk guys from the last 2 seasons that broke up, and like they're all scattered around these sort of like challenger teams. They're all actually kicking ass pretty hard, really raising up a lot of these teams. So I don't know. Thought I'd highlight them. I hope VR comes back, but not. I'm not hopeful. I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Real life, right? One of those real life problem things. Well, we'll
Mhm.
see. We'll see if Rick can turn it around. Yeah, they like the stat wise. I was trying to go through it. I don't see anything that really stands out with these guys. But whatever they're doing has worked, and that disruption at the lower level seems to have done it. But we'll see if they can work it against a team like the Somalies and Crone. But speaking of Crone, they're next up on our review here. Crone Squadron, I would say it's more. It's tough because they were on the bubble. They're one of those bubble teams, just like Orange. I kind of expected them to make the playoffs, just like Orange. Fortunately, not everyone can make the playoffs. Uh, Strong focused PK team. Let's see. Looking at it, only got 2 points in round 3, which is probably the telling story of why they ended up on the bubble. 6 points in round 1, 3 points in round 2. Uh, Very success. To as I just said, but then struggled towards the end of the season. I think the big story there is yes, again in the lower division, the strong PK duo from Trevor and Head Fencer. But one that isn't pointed out here, I think, is Graf Lucas. I think it was also a great addition to this team. Graf is kind of the objective focus that helps them be an X factor in winning games. They have the talent to be dominant. Definitely, it's one of not taking the game too confidently, being cocky in a way. I've seen Crone come into a game and definitely think they're going to win it, and then not win it, right? So it's kind of, I think that's gonna be the story for them in the playoffs as well. Is that they have the talent to basically win this playoff. They just have to make sure that they don't screw it up by coming to a game and saying, "Oh, we're going to 2-0 this, whatever," and then losing or splitting matches they really shouldn't be. And then splitting a match going to game 3 gives the chasing team some confidence here. They can't let that happen, right? And that's what I'm thinking here with Crone. Crone should get to the finals here, but they don't, especially against the Salmays. If they end up against the Salmays, they don't want to take them too lightly and then mess it up and give up a series to them, essentially. Thoughts, Sky. I know that they're your sister
Yeah.
squadron. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I love Crone. I don't know. I don't think they're I mean, I think that they have been overconfident in the past, but I think they've suffered some pretty demoralizing losses this season. I don't think they're taking anybody lightly in anywhere at this point. First of all, and second is I don't think. I mean, the big problem this season wasn't. I don't think it was their confidence. I think it was just real life, right? Like DeGreen's been dealing with real life. He hasn't been able to fly. Head Fencer wasn't able to fly for a bunch of games. Trevor didn't fly for like the middle of the season. And so we're filling in. They're filling in with all of these older veteran Crone players who are great, but who they haven't meshed well yet. I mean, we have Marine, who I think is one of the best sports in the game, and they just haven't been able to hit their groove, I guess. Like they were clicking when they could add everybody in the first in the round 1, but since then they just haven't had the full team there. I don't think Trevor and Fencer have really flown more than 1 or 2 matches since the first 3 of the season. Like they're just like just a nightmare duo to deal with, and like they're good at getting shields down. The bombers do work, and they can farm it out, and like they're a good team when they're at full strength. They just, real life, they have like 9 players, I feel like, at this point, and like they're just trying to find a lineup every week. It's less about, they're just struggling to play the games here, I think.
Consistency, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Consistency is important, right? If you don't have the consistency, then it makes it a struggle to go forward.
The Green's complaining about Knight because Knight subbed for a cat and pushed them out of.
So yeah, looks like Crone definitely, like, of the sort of bubble playoff teams that ended up in this challengers bracket. Crone probably has the clearest path to the final. So we'll see if they take advantage of that and get there. But yeah, lots of talent on that team.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I agree they probably the clearest path. And we'll talk about this in a second. But looking at the brackets, I agree. Crone should make it to the finals. It's a matter of who they're gonna face off against, and maybe it will be this team, the last team we're gonna preview here for Challenger Group, Orange Squadron. Fell to Group C after round 2. A lot of people were expecting to go back into the championship playoffs, but they struggled all season. Got 4 points only in round 1, and then only 1 and 2 points in round 2 and 3. They just held on to C, but could not break through. TRA. I think 2-0'd them, right? I'm trying to remember what it was, or stole a game off of them. and got the points that they needed to go past them. Uh, they are the favorites to win the challenger bracket by a lot of people. Not we'll discuss it in a little bit. We'll see what everyone thinks. But definitely the linchpin I think of Orange Squadron here is Hobbs. Hobbs being present and being moving forward is gonna be critical. I think Orange is another squadron that is suffering from personnel issues, not having the right players available at the right time, and maybe a lack of focus here. Orange Squadron very talented. They have a Plasburst player of their own, great objective players, and they play a very strong meta brand, but just couldn't find it this season. Guys, thoughts on what happened with Orange and what they need to do to make sure they make the finals?
Yeah, they've I think suffered from like lack of scrim partners and personnel issues. Like hard to find scrims when you live on the other side of the planet in Connemara or someplace.
Yeah, what'll help them is if they could schedule matches in a way so that they have scrim partners at least the day of the match, and ideally sometime outside of that too. Because I know it's tough for like a mostly Australian team, and that's true for European teams too. So Crone was a heavily European team, right? As
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think some of these teams, like in these playoffs, they're gonna need to try to get as much practice as they can, because those simple mistakes you make that can cost you like a lot all at once. Those will happen more when you don't play often, and so that's like a big thing that'll help Orange, is if they can just get practice time leading up to the matches.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, they know how to play this game. There's no question that every person on that team, even from the bench to the starters, know how to play this game very well. But the cohesion is important, right? And you're right that just because of that lack of availability, and they have it harder, I think, than the EU teams. At least the EU teams can kind of fly each other, and some of them fly off time as scrim fillers,
Yeah.
right? But Orange doesn't have that ability, and it's kind of hurt them this season. Plus, real life, of course, gets in the way.
Yeah, I think Orange does have it harder than any other team. I also think something they should focus on is like, I know a lot of people complain about Australian servers, so there's like this huge like, oh, who's Empire, and it takes the games, and there's splits like that. But one thing I think like this team needs to think about is like, what are you gonna do when you're NR? Because if you can win NR games and then you can lean into your Empire host, like that'll make you a lot stronger in the best of X's, rather than hoping you just win based on home seed every game, which like isn't, it might work, but I wouldn't like want that to be the only way I win the game. So I think if they can like put good NR performances, then they'll look really strong in this bracket.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know how accurate my perception is, but it seems to me like they worry a little bit too much about the NR farm being really bad with latency. And so they kind of lean into PK just like a tad too much. Like if I look at their numbers, like I think maybe if they just did, because they got some amazing OBJ players, like back off a little bit on the offensive PK and just run through the OBJ, and they'd probably beat. Like I'm really surprised they dropped games to some of those teams in Group C.
So
To
one
be
thing they
perfectly
could
honest.
consider is like the latency is an issue for your hit registration, so your laser farming is worse. So you could maybe focus on maps where you can use Oxes better, like Esselis and
Hmm.
Yavin.
Right.
So maybe they need to plan maps this way to make their NR farm easier. Just things like, I mean, I don't know exactly what'll work. That this will require them to scrim it and practice. Um,
Yeah.
but just something where you can do better laser farming. Or have like as good a farm as you can, or just oop straight off the. I mean, maybe they'll just oop. I don't know. Like
And they're
that might
capable.
work too.
They're capable of it, right? And that's something that some people kind of thought would happen with Orange is that okay, they're either they're ahead or they're way behind, and a little fear of the oop, but they just never pull the trigger, and it's something that maybe they should consider, especially here in the playoffs. If they're behind in the series, why not just try that disruption plan and see if they can pull it off? Okay. Let's I know we're a little bit behind on our schedule, but let's go into the tournament here really quickly and go through the matchups and then go through our predictions here. So as stated before, Orange Squad Laser Rangers will face off in the top match that hasn't been scheduled yet. Kinden Strider, CAJ to play Friday. Crone and Rebel Yell. I don't think have been scheduled yet either. Man, I need to bring up my calendar here. I apologize. And then we have Venom and the Somniers, which I'm gonna bring up the calendar and get these. But let's start with Laser Ranger and Orange. Orange are one of the favorites to win this tournament. The Rangers need to exploit the Empire lag advantage and be smart with their NR play and their map choices. But this is a game that I expect Orange to just go in and win. I think they win this 2-0, guys. Thoughts on this matchup and what are your predictions? Actually, start with you, Scott. What do you think?
Oh, I think they'll win 2-0. I think this will be one they win on NR.
You think they're going to take NR as the? You think they're going to take? So you think they're going to actually pick faction NR and then go from there? Is what you're thinking here?
No, I think they'll win on Empire, then win on NR second game.
I understand.
So-
Okay. Maze, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Orange will take this. Probably 2-0.
And Rod, what do you think here? 2-0 for you as well?
No disagreement from me.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I like you guys were saying. I love Laser Rangers. They are just keep growing, but Orange is well too seasoned a team, well too talented to give this game up. But we'll see. Orange, I think, needs to make a statement game here, come out 2-0, so to remind everyone that they're the team to beat in this division. Next matchup, can the Striders see Jade? No, we have not in the regular season. We have scrimmed each other a bit. Talent history does favor the Kitten Striders. But Jade is a team that's on the rise here. For me, I want to say 2-0 to the Striders, but as an announcer, with the issues that the Striders have, it might be a 2-1 win for the Striders. Squeak it out, guys. Thoughts? Start with you, Rod. What do you think here?
I think 2-1 for Striders isn't a bad call. I would favor Kenton here over Jade.
How about you, Maze? What do you think here? Do you think 2-0 or do you have other opinions?
I'm going to go with Ken-10, but I think Rebel Pilot will crash at some point and cost his team one game, so it'll be a 2-1.
Excuse me, I won't crash. I'm going to get killed because I'm PKing the bombers when I shouldn't be, and that's how I'm going to give up some points.
All right, as long as you've got it planned out.
I already have a plan, of course. Scott, what are your thoughts?
2-0. My boy Medic's too good.
Oh, I love that. I hope Medic is listening. There you go. So again, Striders should come out the winners here, according to everyone here. I think this is the next one here is Crone versus Rebel Yell. Crone easy favorites. Rebel Yell, a very new team. Will Roxy play hero? I don't think so. Honestly, even if Crone is not showing their best here, I'm expecting a 2-0 from Crone. Just too much experience, too much talent. I don't see a delta here. Maze, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a tough matchup for Rebel Yell. Maybe some PK both ways, but Crone can play that game too, so I think they'll come out on top 2-0.
How about you, Scott? What do you think?
2-0.
And
Crone.
Rod?
Yeah, so
Cool. Okay, let's go to the last matchup here before we go to a quick commercial break. Coming Red and the Sommeliers, I think, is probably the more interesting matchup here. Red won their only match against them 2-0. Will Datka be Delta here? He has gone better as the season gone on. Carr has to play strong in order to beat the Sommeliers. For me, I'm thinking Corellian Sommeliers win 2-1 and upset Red Venom here. Let's start with Scott. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm agree with you. 2-1 Corellians Malays.
Maze, what do you think?
I'm going to go the other way, 2-1 to Cavern Angels Red. I think Dotka's pretty strong, but he's only one player. And I think across the board, CA Red probably has a little bit more experience in seasoning. And so don't sleep on players like Viger Lucid, who will drop, 100K on you.
Well,
while you're
Viger's
not
on
looking.
Jade.
Oh, that's right.
Corball, right?
Gosh,
Nasty
I get them
Corball,
confused.
yeah,
There's
the other VR.
Corball. Who else? Who's the other OBJ on CA Red right now?
I have a bunch. I just had it open.
Yeah, it's like they're all bombers. So
yeah, I mean they
anyway,
kind of like a fluid, like objective bomber setup.
yeah.
And Rob,
Um,
go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, I think they'll do enough to eke out a 2-1 against LSS.
And Rod, what are your thoughts?
yeah, I'd favor Red, CA Red too. Not heavily, but I think they can take the series.
Okay. I know we're a little bit over time here, so let's go into just our quick predictions here. Scott, I know you already have a bracket out. Scott, do you want to talk to your bracket, or you just want to just say Orange is going to beat Crone in the finals?
Orange is going to beat Crone in the finals. That's all I got for you. It's nothing too interesting on this one.
I guess for me, I very similar bracket. I think Crone gets to the finals. I'm gonna play the favorite here and say I think the Striders upset Orange in the semifinals, and I think it's Striders versus Crone in the finals. I want to say Striders somehow pull it off, but I think Crone will win this bracket here over Striders 2-1. That's my prediction. How
I'll
about
say the
you?
top bracket will win. Whoever wins the top bracket will beat the
Oh,
bottom bracket.
interesting. Okay, interesting. Maze, what are your thoughts? Who thinks it'll win this, and any predictions from you?
For the whole bracket,
Yeah.
I'm going to go through and say OSQ is going to take the whole thing.
Interesting. Rod, how about you? Any predictions on who's going to win this, or any general thoughts?
I guess I'd favor Orange too, but don't. I wouldn't put them like as heavy favorites just because of how I've seen them play this season. Like I've seen too many ups and downs from them, and also I would say in this bracket these are going to be high variance games. Like it's not going to be obvious who wins until like Flagship finally gets to low health. Just from what I've seen from, I haven't watched like all the games from these teams, but I've watched some of them from each, and just seen so much variance. So I think there's like a non-trivial chance Crone or even someone else can take it.
Yeah, and I know everyone. It's 3 Orange, 1 Crone for me. And just to your point, I think Crone definitely this season has that upward swing mobility. I think they're gonna really upset. So well, not upset, but really put their stamps in, win 2-0, come to the finals feeling hot. But we'll see. Okay, so that was the challenger preview. I know a little bit longer than I was expecting. Give us about 5 minutes here because we've been talking for about an hour. Just some quick notes. Friday Night Flights is next week. We do have some games. I will get the schedule of games to you guys. Actually, I think it's on the end of this. We'll talk about the schedule games when we come back. So give us 5 minutes and just take a break, get some water, and we'll come back and talk about the championship division here. So give us 5 minutes and we'll be back. Talk to you guys in a little bit.
Oh yeah, whoa, look, they can never keep me down, I'm going.
We're live.
Hello.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Rebel Pilot, and again, this is an SCF presentation of the Season 8 playoffs for SCL. Joining us today is Ska, Maze, Rod, and Big Brain has just joined us. Welcome, Big Brain, to the discussion.
Thank you. I don't know a lot, but I'm gonna try.
Yeah. So really quickly, I was able to pull up some of the schedule here. Tomorrow, Hellporgs will play say Thunder at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. On Friday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, Orange Squadron will take on the Laser Rangers. Then Striders will take on CAJ then at 11 p.m. And then at Sunday, 4 p.m., Hide Guard take on TRA. And we'll get to two of these matches in a little bit here. We'll have more game schedules that come. We will have another one of these previews for EU time friendly with a different set of casters, different opinions, different talking points. So we'll see there. So let's get back into the championship division. Hope we can go through this a little bit quicker. Sorry, let me just go here. Okay. Starting with the bottom team, very quickly, the TRA Rebel Alliance. The Rebel Alliance surprised a lot of people here. They started off very weakly in round 1. They turned it around very quickly, though. TRA winning 9 points in round 2 to shoot up into Group C. And they basically snuck by Orange and Crone Squadron in order to get in these playoffs. They'll have a tough matchup here, which we'll get to in a second. Pilot to watch is Sharper, great objective play. Reliable, consistent, evasive. Another one for me is Ghost. Ghost, I think, is the linchpin of this team. Ghost is a great two-way player. He can play both objective and flex, and I think he brings a lot to TRA. Sky, any other thoughts from you on TRA?
No, you pretty much covered it. I'll say Ghost has been. I've seen him everywhere practicing, getting in every scrim possible. He's definitely raising his game.
Cool. And guys, any other opinions on TRA before we move on to the next team?
I mean, I have one that's like not related to skill, is more tidbit.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, TRA was my first ever team. This was like, I think I joined that before the game came out. Like, you know those early days,
Yeah.
where like you like make up teams.
Oh, cool.
I was in there like Ghost Squadron, but then the server itself wasn't really competitive at that point, and so then we spread off to make our own little Ghost Squadron.
Yeah.
And then we disbanded.
I remember that. Cool. Okay. So let's move on to Cavern Angels. I'm sorry. Was there someone have another opinion on TRA before I move on? Okay. If not, go on to Cavern Angels Thunder. 9 seed. This was a team for I think for a lot of us didn't expect to make the championship playoffs here, but they started off very strongly. 9 points in the first round, starting from I think Division D. Come in, win get promoted from Group C with 5 points. Had a tough round in Group B, not scoring any points, but they have a very interesting, creative off-meta play. They're coming here into a great second season. They're really putting things together in this season to make it here. A great pilot to watch out here is Biker Bugs, especially, and he runs maybe when the Y-Wing. Again, off-meta play here. Scott, any other thoughts to add here from Cavern Angels Thunder on the slide you created?
I'm being told that this is actually their first season, so I guess they're.
Yeah,
it's even.
I
more
said it out
impressive.
loud. I'm like, that's wrong. But I just you already wrote it, so I didn't want to change what I said. I'm like, that's wrong. But continue.
I could have sworn they were here last season tearing it up.
A
But
lot, their individual players have been around, so it's not, it's one thing to be it's different being new player rather than just like a team of people who haven't played before, but they have played before. These aren't like, oh, I started playing the game, this season.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a good team. They can PK. Biker ran the Meme Beam Y-Wing, which was difficult to deal with. I was like, well, this will be easy. I'll just blow him up, and he didn't die. I don't know. It was hard.
I mean, so it's Roger Point. I mean, they're a combination of old Nova players, Time Bomb, Biker Bugs is a seasoned player. Whatever they decided.
Pseudo.
Pseudo is an old Nova player too, right? I mean, these are guys that just decided, you know what, we're going to play the game we want to play, and whatever meta is, be damned. And they made it work. And in a way, it kind of threw a lot of teams off earlier. Early on the scrims, a lot of us were kind of like, this isn't working for them. Are they going to keep sticking with it? And they said, yeah, we're going to keep sticking with it. And here they are in the playoffs. Now teams have to be up against them. Guys, any other thoughts before we move on to the next team?
Yeah, I think when me and Ska was casting their game against it was Hive Guard, I like I noticed how like off meta they were, but I think it really works. Like their turret viewing has possibility. I feel so. I like that they experiment.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how they do, but we'll get to that discussion in a second. Next team up, the Hellporgs. They picked up 2 new players, Marcelo and Fameplane, to add depth to their roster. I made a joke earlier in the season that they must have like 30 players on their team now. They had a very tough start in round 1, no points, got torn apart. But they came back. They did the one thing they needed to do, mentally toughen up. Got 5 points in round 2, 7 points in round 3. They took down Crone TRA. And they won Group C to get themselves into the playoffs. Sky, here you put Izamov. I don't know if you want to speak about him here a little bit as your player to watch.
I was talking to Fame about this. He said he's less known, he's improving, he's consistent, and he also plays the Ion Defender, which has really been key to them being able to unlock their triple bomber. I know you know this because your team flies this a lot, but you really need a good Ion Defender to be able to run that strategy well as a really good support and 3 good bombers. So, but you need that defender for shields and for to cause some chaos.
In a way, like it allowed them to play more to their strengths, especially with they're one of those teams. Real life came in, they had roster issues early on. Again, I think that's why round 1 was tough for them. They leaned into their strengths here, right, and that got them successful round 2 and 3. Not a lot of teams have stuck with the triple bomber. They have, and I think it's worked for them. Will it be enough to make the playoffs? I don't know. We'll see. Something to talk about, guys. Any other thoughts on Hellporgs before I move on here?
Yeah, just a very solid team all around. I wouldn't say they were torn to bits by Hive Guard. Those were competitive games. So this is a squad that can take it to anybody, I feel. On a good day, they can compete with elite level teams, I feel. Isaiah, I just want to shout out him as a former B team player back in our seasons in SCL. So it's awesome to see him come back, join Hellporgs, and really be a fundamental player for them.
Before I give Aaron opinions, Brain, to answer your question, I know this is the thing on others. First, I hope my mic is fixed. Second, we're kind of moving faster through these teams because there's more teams, but we're going to go into depth of strategy points and what they need to do to win the playoffs when we go to the matchups. We're trying to do the reverse of what we did last time. We just didn't want to get caught up in a lot of the talking points of each of the teams until we got the matchups. I think the matchups have a lot more meat to the discussion to answer questions on the stream. So I hope everyone understands that's why we're moving fast. I think we're going to slow down as we get to the matchups. Let's move to Hive Guard and then let's continue the discussion.
It's because Rebel talks so fast, it gives the impression that we're like speeding through.
We just don't care.
Again, like we'll get to the meat of the discussion as we get to the matchups. I think there's especially because as we saw in the Challenger division, I think we're a little bit more comfortable talking about the matchups as opposed to just team highlights. Hive Guard. Excellent season this season. They came out strong, 6 points in round 1, 4 points in round 2, 4 points in round 3. Stayed up in B division after they came up. Excellent job for them. Just unfortunate having to run up the cab twice to try and get out of B division. From me personally, I think Hive Guard has been one of those teams that this season I think has really stepped it up. And I know that you guys are old Guac players and you're old B players. But from last season to this season, I think that there was a definitely that next step up in order to be a push into an elite team, essentially. Sky, you have a turn up. You want to talk about your watch out here for?
Yeah, I feel like people. I mean, like people sort of know Turnup, but he's a phenomenal player. I think he's good at calling shots. I think he's good at he's a phenomenal PK player. He knows where to be on the field. He's just really, really good. But I feel like Maze could probably speak more to that.
Yeah, Maze, like their thoughts, because this is your team. What are your thoughts here, and especially in your guys' season?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like we've made incremental progress over the last, I guess, this is the 3rd season, I guess, we've been together. We won Challenger Division in our first season together, and then they redid the divisions. So, like, I guess our overall record is similar to last year, but it does feel like we're closing the gap on some of the higher level teams. Hasn't really shown up yet in terms of number of wins against those guys, but it feels like we're making progress.
I mean, for me personally, I think it's just an issue of the 2 game split. I'm a favor of it, but I think the 2 game split kind of changes the complexion because you guys were winning a lot of 2-1s last season. So going to 1-1, not having the opportunity of the 3rd game makes the record look worse, but I don't think it's actually not worse, but the same. But I don't think it's actually the same. I think you guys have improved. You're starting to find that series of clicks. Even like with Fox and Sundance, really starting to knock it out of the park. I think that's also allowed Dick to really be more expressive in his support play. Just overall, I think you guys are really gelling, and you're a scary team to play against and to watch because of how well you guys are doing. I think you guys will be a surprise in the playoffs, in my opinion. But any other thoughts before we move on to the next team?
Yeah, I don't like you guys because you kill me too good, and you're really scary. And I agree. Look out, these guys are scary.
So speaking of that, next up is Cabin Angels Blue, 6th seed. Historically, they've been a top 4 team a lot of times, have made the playoffs. They've been a strong team historically. Thanks for the follow, whoever that was. Dominated Group B round 1, 9 points, perfect round. Came into Group A, struggled a little bit, just lost out to Savrip, only picking up 2 points, but they came back Group B, dominated again, 7 points. They
6 points.
Is it 6 points? I misread.
Yes.
6.
Another team got 7.
7.
I
Yes,
should know that.
I misread this. Sorry, you're right. 6 points. 726. 726. My bad. Thank you. I think the story of Carrying Angels Blue this season has definitely been the personnel issues and unavailability of pilots at certain times. So not always being able to put up the best team at all times. But I think, Scott, you want to talk about Deadweight here as your highlighted player?
I feel like Big Brain probably talk about him, but I was talking to Rain about this. He's just a phenomenal TIE fighter pilot, really good at getting shields down, really good at just pumping in the damage. And I know in our game he got out in the open. We were nowhere near close enough to stop those ions, and he just got shields down easy peasy and went to work. I think he's a good piece. With Rain's like a really good shot caller, PKer, and obviously Big Brain. You're awesome at everything, and then having Deadweight is sort of like OBJ focused flex. I think it's a good group.
Yeah, Brain, thoughts on your team and how you did the season, what you need to do to win.
Those guys are fucking garbage. Get them out of here. No. I agree. Deadweight he's our Rain has been very busy recently. Deadweight is our Rain in shining armor, if you will. He has been really kind of I would say Rain is the glue, and then Deadweight is getting stickier now, and he's starting to glue it up a bit too. And so with him and just everybody just melding really well. And so I agree that Deadweight is awesome, and I love him.
Awesome. Any thoughts on Cabin Angels Blue before we move on? Okay, if not, I think the next team is a little bit closer to my heart. Savrip Prime, 5th seed. They had a shakeup between season 7 and 8. They combined with some of the old Pad Disco, Lauren, Sagan, and Quinn, melded with Platt, Hod, and Creek to make Savrip Prime. They were in Group A throughout the entire time, but they just stayed on by the skin of their teeth several times here. Round 1, they got 4 points. Round 2, they only got 2 points and just stayed in based on RPI and I think the capture differential. And in round 3, they scored no points here. So they have not been doing well, at least what people expected of Savrip Prime. For me, I think that another team that real life has affected their ability. They need to really step in and prep for the playoffs here and kind of just dig deep and find some metal in order to be effective here in the playoffs. I know I put this in, Scott. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but for me, Lauren, I think it's the linchpin of Savrip's success. Her support play or her ability to be an objective player has allowed Savrip to run off meta stuff if they want to. Of course, Lauren being able to drive forward and get the support in tough, sticky situations is critical. And for me, I think Lauren is probably the biggest part of their success. Guys, I don't know if you have any other opinions on Savrip Prime here.
Good question. Do you think this season has been disappointing for them, or do you just think that that's just it's A and the competition is insane in A right now?
I think it's a little bit of A and B. The competition in A and B is very very tough. The top 6-7 teams are probably very. I don't want to talk about my guys. Sorry, I'm trying to fix it. It's very tight. I think they're suffering. So when you make these new teams, right, and we'll talk about it with Beck. either it all clicks and everyone is happy very quickly, or it doesn't click, and now you're trying to figure out how do we make this work, right? I think Savert fell into that second part where they were really, previously we had Zareth leading us in, and things had changed. So the leadership had changed in terms of shot calling and whatnot, and we were only really missing one more flex to really tighten things up. And we thought that with getting hot and whatnot, it was going to happen in this way, but they've been playing with their rosters. Like, they haven't had consistent setup in their rosters. And they only last couple rounds they've really done that. So I think just a little bit of everything has affected Separate Prime's effectiveness. I'm hoping that they will settle down and say that this has to be our lineups coming in, and we have to focus on it in order to win. The team is talented, right? There's no doubt that the talent is there to win these games. They just haven't shown it on effectively in the matches, so they need to figure it out, right? That's my opinion, guys. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, they're a super team, but
I did not realize they picked up Pod. That's scary.
I think
for
I
them.
agree. With since Lauren went back to full-time support, she's really shined in that position, playing really strongly. And so I think I think when you have a team with these ingredients, after the roster shake up, they probably had some expectations for themselves. But when I look at their performance this season, I don't really see that they've regressed. It's at least as good as last season. If you recall, last season they also fell to Group B for one round. So yeah, they basically stayed in A all season, and that's hard to do. Extremely hard.
Yep, agreed. Any other thoughts before we move on to the fourth seed here?
You have a really good logo. They have a really cool logo. Is that the Metroid Prime logo behind it?
That's all we did. We just had the Metro Prime logo behind the Saber logo. That literally is the
I didn't notice
laziest.
that.
That's the laziest logo we had in the entire team.
I did not notice that.
Okay, Night Witch's Siren Squadron. I think this is the biggest surprise of the entire league right now. 6-0 in Group C, getting into the playoffs. The Sirens. This is the 9-2-7. 9 points in round 1. Excellent job. 2 points in round 2, and then 7 points in round 3. They upset Cab. Scott, you put that in, not me. I'm not gonna say you guys are peaking before crashing the playoffs. I think you guys are an excellent team. You play off meta. You play an off meta style, which has worked. And a lot of, again, this goes back to what I said with Cat. A lot of people didn't think what you guys were going to do was going to work, but you have found a way to make it work. And not that you force it in, but you use it where it's smart, right? And highlighted player, Sidestack. I don't want to even steal this from you because I agree with you. Sidestack has been a breath of fresh air. Scott, why don't you talk about Sidestack here really quickly?
yeah, Sidestack's fantastic. I really feel like I think everyone else on our team is sort of not like super well known. People know him, but I feel like people just don't know Sidestack, even though he's like pretty active. And he was on Laser Rangers for a couple seasons, which is a lower team, so maybe people didn't watch those games as much. But he can fly whatever he wants. He flies OBJ pretty much with us. But like he flew like an ICT Pro Tour against Hive Guard in our game 1, and he did fantastic with that. He got turned up right off the bat, which is incredible. It's amazing. Like we run the A wing and we run the B wing sometimes, and sometimes we need something else to make it work depending on the map, because you just can't run those two by themselves. You need to fill holes and gaps. And Sidestack can do it. I mean, Barry can do it too, and JC obviously fills in too. But like there are always holes in our strategy, and having Sidestack around really allows us to play with it and make and play with our strategies in a way that I think makes sense, and isn't just like us. We're not just like having fun with what we're doing. We're like, these are thought through.
Yeah, no, it's legitimate, right? And that's why I said, like, early on people were questioning it. But for me, I think the player to watch is you in the B wing. And again, the B
don't.
The B wing is
Don't
something that the B wing is something that a lot of people one B wing, yeah, bombs make sense. 2 B wings though, a lot of people are like, oh, what's happening here? What's going on? But I think because you bring a different dimension to that B wing as a PK B wing, as a more, and which does damage. I'm not saying it doesn't do damage, but a PK B wing, and applies the pressure. So it allowed Autumn for a while to run A wing, but as you said, you guys can flex away from the A wing and do something else when it fits the situation. But the fact that your B wing is pliable in these situations, it's not a one-trick pony, has made it effective, which allows the double B wing strategy to open up, because that second B wing can do a multitude of things. It could be a second PK if you want it to be, or it can be a bomb run or Pro Torps, which is what you guys have been doing, right? So why for me, I think your effectiveness in the beaming has been the highlight of the season and a big reason why you guys are making this really work. And that's what I'm seeing from the games I'm watching. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on Siren Squad here.
I just have one question. When are we gonna get the 5 B-Wings, okay?
You gotta
That's what I want.
You gotta resupply them.
That's when I join Red Venom.
Yeah, I think a B-Wing needs a certain ratio to support. So, I believe 1 to 1 or better in favor of
No. 5 of them.
It doesn't really have shields.
Okay, any other? Go ahead, Rod. Sorry.
I want to see someone drop 5 sets of bombs with B-Wings and then have nothing to do.
Yeah.
Go back and resupply
Dude, that
themselves.
cruiser is gonna be gone.
I think there's some solo players that that would love to see that because I see you see that in solo queue, right? So maybe some solo players want to see that. But okay, sorry. Any other thoughts on Siren before we move on to the 3rd seed? Okay, let's talk about the Backstreet Boys. They were the belle of the ball last season, getting to the finals, and were 1 game away of possibly stealing away a miracle run.
Yeah, I want the PK.
And I think we talk about here dominant PK. They were a group that just came together just to see if it could work, and they gelled quickly last season. They've proven that it wasn't a one-off fluke. They've been very strong this season. 5-4-4, very strong points. They came up from Group B, stayed up in Group A this entire time, and were super competitive. Dropped some games they probably shouldn't have, but they stayed up in A since they came up. And they're a very scary team to watch. Ska, you have Knight here as your player watch. I have a different player to watch, but why don't you go through Knight first?
We all know who Knight is. He's maybe the best player ever, possibly. It's interesting though because he's on a different team. They play a sort of really offbeat, weird style, completely different than Sirens, but in that sort of vein of not playing meta. So I don't know how Knight adapts to it. I'm interested to see how this playoff run goes with him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Knight fits in well. He'll pair well in the PK run. I mean, he can pair well with Dalek and be just extremely oppressive, or they can go another way with it if they want to. Of course, they like roster shifts here. They lost Sika, so Knight was a perfect addition to fill in for that Sika role. But for me, the player to highlight is, and not just because you're casting me again, Rod. I think you were the missing piece for this team to really make the push for a championship. You pairing with Chile is a scary, scary thought. I think you're probably the number 1 objective pair in the game right now. I looked at your stats. I think you have a mind-boggling 141 AI per death, which is monstrously insane, which means you're doing what you said earlier. You're not dying, you're doing the job. And the fact that Chile is your pair is staggering. So coming in the playoffs, I think you guys on paper are a strong team. Maybe not the one that's taking off in terms of performances, but I think if you guys lock it down, stick to the plan, and make smart strategy calls, and we can talk about this. We talk the matchups. You guys, I think will make the finals. I think you guys are one of the 3 teams who are failing it, but you're one of 2 teams in my mind that are making the finals. Rod, thoughts on your own team?
So I would say me and Chile are not the best farm pair on the team. I would disagree with that.
Oh,
I also
really?
have no idea if we can field 5 people for any of our playoff matches. So that's gonna. I'm gonna put a big dampener on
the real life problem.
On your expectations.
The real life problem, and that's the story.
We've been having a hard time fielding 5 people all season, and I knew that like before I joined the team. I was, so to some extent, I just helped mitigate that issue. I mean, they would have just recruited someone else if I didn't join. But like we've been having a hard time fielding 5 people all season. We've off-rolled people in matches. We've played subs, and this is likely going to continue. I don't even know if we're allowed to play subs in the playoffs.
You will be. I know that there's to be some talk
Okay.
about the flexibility, but the flexibility is there. You guys can play subs.
Yeah, but so like that's not a winning formula to not have like a team that can actually play. So I'm not like that. I'm honestly not confident in our chances.
Yeah, and actually back to your one point, I do want to say, another person I want to, and it's hard because I think you guys are a very interesting team. MJ has been this season, and the funny part is me and Scott were going back and forth about putting Knight or MJ here. MJ didn't play in round 3, so I kind of didn't want to put her on here because she didn't play a whole round. But MJ, I think this season has stepped up when she has played, and I'm kind of wondering if you're alluding to the fact that MJ has really solidified herself as that number 2 role with Chile, or what are your thoughts, especially on MJ's play this season?
I've been happy playing with MJ. And if she's available and can play in the matches, that'll be great. I'm really hoping we just don't have to play subs though. Like that's the point that I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's a scary thought because you have that uncertainty.
And MJ is also probably the league MVP for her roster building alone. I mean, this team arguably has top 5 players at every single position. Knight coming back, if he gets dialed in for the playoffs, like availability issues aside, like this is a very scary team to play against. These players are all extremely difficult to cope with. I'd say they're one of the favorites for sure.
Any other thoughts on Beck before we move on then?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard of this Rod guy, but he's apparently kind of good at this game or something. He's a scary guy. Again, I have a list of people I don't want shooting at me, and Rod is near the top.
I'm not a flex though.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I mean, I've off-rolled as flex in scrims, but I don't flex main.
I thought.
No, he's objective. He's been objective for that.
My brain, it's liquid. It's ooze.
Well,
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So
that's okay.
Let's move on to the second seed team here.
I swear.
Tempesta. Sorry, Great Tempesta. Long history. I know that Tempesta merged with Hyde and then Wise Guy. So Tempest has been several names through the last couple of years, but the core has always been there. Top team ever since Cal Cup. They made a strong run in the Cal Cup. Then they came after that season SCL, and was that the one that they won at that season? I think that was the one that
I thought they did badly in the Cal Cup. Didn't they lose 2 matches in a row?
No, I thought they won.
I might be wrong.
They ran up against
final?
the Miracle Run of Baywatch. I think it was right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they win their matches and they came against the Baywatch run because the Baywatch also steamrolled us in the Cal Cup. So that Miracle Run Baywatch was something to behold.
Yeah, that's right. They said it in chat. They lost low seed versus Hut because that was the Empire favorite era, and they just lost the Empire games. And then I think they lost. I think at that time Baywatch was like a pretty strongly better team.
Yeah,
because I remember they got 3rd in the tournament.
Correct. Yeah, and they just really dialed it in. But they've been a strong team. When after Cal Cup, they really stepped up, and then they're winning championships like back to back to back kind of deal. They're probably the best objective team in the game right now.
I would say they're. So this is the team that I'd say has the strongest farm pair.
Well, okay, yeah, no, you know what? Let's be fair enough. And in my mind, I was thinking for you guys and back. But yes, I absolutely agree with you. And the funny part to that point is I highlighted Lions because I think Lions is the linchpin of that farm pair. But really, those guys can rotate through their objective pairs, and it's still the same scary farm versus objective that they're just gonna put out the numbers, right? And that's why Tempest, or whatever you want to call him, is a tough and scary team to face because even if they're not putting the PK pressure on you, you're just worried that if your defenses aren't fast enough, they're going to steamroll you with their damage and their output, right?
I wouldn't. So I don't. I disagree with highlighting Lions. I mean, Lions is obviously great, but like Matt and Notom are a fine pair. Like I think Isoda and Scribbler are going to be like. I think they'll win if they're going to win the championship, it'll be based on like those two really pulling it through.
The other thing about Lions is that he can play flex at an extremely high level. So they've got, some multi-role talent on that team. And they're probably the team, it seems like if you look at strong meta play, we've kind of had a couple of generations of squadrons now. We had Splinter, and then Cavern Angels Gold, and then Tempest kind of stepped into that role as the number one sort of meta team that just they just play so well, almost perfectly it seems sometimes, and so I would say this is the team to beat for sure.
Anyone else thoughts?
I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Lions because we were on Tempest together, and so. Oh wait, Tempesta. I wonder if that's on purpose. Oh no, Tempest. Wait,
You're talking about way
No.
back when, yeah,
the Typhoon, not Tempest.
Typhoon,
Typhoon.
yeah, Typhoon
Yeah.
Squadron, TS.
Yeah, the old days. So yeah, I love Lions, and he is one scary guy. Again, the list of players don't want shooting at me when he plays flex. He's up there.
Gas, yeah, he skipped Gas. I mean, Gas was a flash in the pan, right? They won that first Cal Cup, and then they kind of faded away after that. I'm sorry. Comments from the chat. Yeah, no, I agree. And like when Tempest is on, right? They're the you all said it. They're the team to beat. They're gonna be very hard. They even when they're off, they're a very tough team to beat. But when they're on, they're almost invincible. So them being second seed is kind of an anomaly, but only because going to the first seed here, Randall Lions Baywatch really turned it on here in the back half. They came off a bad season. Yeah, they came off a bad season last season, right? And a lot of us were like, oh man, what's Baywatch going to do this season? They started the first round 0-6 and looked like they were done. Like it was over for them as a contender. Then all of a sudden something clicked, and maybe getting thrown out of Group A was it. And just the rest of the season, unstoppable. I remember casting the game with them against Savrop, and it was like, it really was just watching a machine go through this game and hitting every note perfectly. And can they maintain momentum? I think they do. I think Baywatch is in my favorite to win the championship right now. They are just looking invincible. Scott, I don't know if you want to talk about Vic Shias since you put him here as your highlight player.
Yeah, I mean, he's back. He's doing tons of OBJ. We played them in the beginning of Group B. This was right after their 0-6 in round one. We were like, oh, okay, Baywatch, we can take them. No, they stomped us. Vix put up ridiculous numbers. Couldn't kill him. Couldn't get pressure on him. Just did whatever he wanted. So, I mean, in retrospect, it's not as bad as a loss, seeing as how they've torn everybody to bits. But just going 6-0 in Group A is incredible.
Twice. It's twice. Oh no, first was B, then came
Group
up A.
B was
Yeah. But
I'll be right back.
But still, B is not an easy. B's never an easy group either. But I mean, it's whatever they did to just lock it down. And I in a way, we could talk about it in their matchup. I know a lot of it is that they just cut out a lot of the fat, right? A lot of the off meta stuff that they were trying and going back to the bread and butter stuff and tightening it down, right? And I think that's why they're a scary team to watch. And not only that they can do the meta properly and well, but they can all rotate through their roles. So mid-match, if something is not working, someone can change ships, or three people can change ships, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, what do we do? And when you're in these grooves and you're trying to like overcome the opponents, when suddenly the whole thing changes, either it doesn't work and you're going to steamroll them, or you're trying to adjust to that and you're caught flat-footed. And winning small moments like that is how you win these games. And Baywatch being able to do these small moment changes allows them to really keep every team on their guard, because if they're not paying attention, it's over. Baywatch will turn the game around and put it away, essentially, is what I'm seeing. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on Baywatch before we go into the playoff matchups.
I think a big thing with getting Vix is like in round one, they would have Disco play farm at times just because that's just what they had to field. But I think Disco is one of the best flexes that's ever played the game. So having him be able to flex, and then having like someone else that can do the farm, that's been big for their team. I know they switched their support roles too because Brandon was doing it, and then they switched to Tenchi. But I don't think that was as big of a factor because I think both of them play support and farm well. And they're both very good farmers.
Yeah.
But I think like just having Disco be able to flex is a big help to their team.
Agreed. And like he's been consistent solid all season, right? Like when Disco is on, because even in SPL, oh my god, Disco in SPL is the worst. And in this past season, he wasn't as available for CTX, and it showed in their outcome, finishing third in the SPL league. And them without Disco is a completely different team. So same thing here. Baywatch got the advantage of Disco being in full form here, and that going forward, I think you're right, is a very critical part to their success, and they need to keep that up. Okay, let's quickly go to the playoffs picture here, and then we'll talk about the matchups so you guys can go at it here. We have the play-ins: Thunder versus Porgs, and then we have Hiveguard versus TRA, which I think I just said is going to be Sunday at 4 p.m. And then Thunder and Porgs will be playing tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. And then whoever wins between Thunder and Porgs will face Baywatch. Between Guard and TRA will face Tempasa, which will then give us the next round of matchups. Savrup will take on Niwi. Backstreet Boys will take on Blue. So let's start with the play-ins. Thunder versus Porgs. You know what? Let me let you guys start. Guys, thoughts. Rod, why don't you go first on this matchup?
I think Hellporgs probably, but I think this could be a close series. I think what I think might happen is some of the cat players will struggle with some of the like different kind of PK pressure they'll get from Hellporgs, because they put a lot of pressure throughout the game, like a lot of offensive PK, a lot of tie bomber PK with Jackson, and I think that can like disrupt some of the players on cat. And so I think if Hellporgs like take advantage of those opportunities, they could do well there.
And it's also I think getting the kills too, right? Because you, in a way, the off meta of Thunder has allowed them to do the objective damage quick enough somehow to make it work, right? So they have to secure those kills but not waste the time, right? I agree with you. I think the Porgs probably take this in. Is this a best of 5 series? I think
Yeah, I think it's best of 5.
so. I think
Yeah, it is.
I think the Porgs take it 3-1. But Thunder, like you said, Thunder's off meta has been kind of weird and strange. So it's just Porgs can't screw up the small moments that Thunder's going to try and win, right? But Porgs should easily move through the meta very quickly here, in my opinion. Other guys, other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. 3-1 seems very accurate to me, but only if like Hellporgs like really give it their all. If they become what's the word, like subservient or like lazy,
Complacent.
Cats complacent. That's it. Thank you. Cats is gonna like just sweep them, and like sweep their legs on like pull the carpet, and it's gonna be rough. So they gotta Hellporgs has to be careful, but if they are, then I feel like they might be able to get it out.
How about you, Maze? What do you think here?
I favor Hellporks here. I can see perhaps Thunder having some PK success, but it's probably not enough to sort of disrupt Hellpork's overall strength as an OBJ-focused team. So I do think that Hellpork is going to come out on top, maybe even a 3-0.
3-0. Wow. Ooh, Scott, what do you think?
That's a good question. I think Hellporgs. I don't think Hellporgs drops an Empire game. Because I think their Empire is good, and I think there are some weaknesses to exploit, but I do think Cat's Empire game is actually pretty good too. So I'll say 3-2, and Empire wins every game.
And I think Porgs are the higher seed, right? Yes, they are. So, so if, as long as you're saying, as long as Porgs pick Empire, they're going to win this series 3-2. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, if they picked NR, I still think they win 3-2. I don't know if it says sure.
That would be an interesting matchup, and whoever wins that will have to go on and face the behemoth that is Baywatch. Okay, let's go to the next play-in. That is not the right one. The next play-in is TRA versus Hiveguard. Let's start with you, Maze. What do you think about this matchup?
It should be a fun one. TRA certainly has improved from their round 1 form. And so they're coming into the playoffs strong. Their team, I think we have to take seriously.
You guys think? I'm asking you, but where do you think the series will end up?
I won't make a prediction. You guys can do that.
I'll predict. I think that okay, to be fair, I haven't seen Terry play recently, so but I could see a 3-1 or 3-0 for Hiveguard because you guys are really good.
I think Terry is a very strong team when they put forward their best 5, and it's another one of those who's available for this match. They have players from all over the world, kind of deal. Their PK pressure, I think, is probably on level with you guys at Hiveguard, but you guys definitely have the better objective and support play, in my opinion. TRA will need to make some adjustments against you guys in order to be successful. The question is, can they do that, especially with your high level efficiency on damage? For me, I think TRA probably steals one game, but I think this goes 3-1 in favor of Hive Guard. Scott, what do you think?
I don't think TRA's PK is at the level of Hiveguard. Hiveguard doesn't PK as much as other teams, but they PK on transitions and at really critical points. And Turn Up Fox at Sundance are a great team. I think TRA is, if they're left to like be like if they play an OBJ team, I think they do all right. But like against a heavy, like against PK pressure, I think they crumble a little bit. I don't think they survive Fox and the rest of them. So I'm gonna say, I will say, I'm a little bit worried about Hiveguard's openers. I think y'all lost most of them this season, but I don't think it matters here. I think you still won 3-0.
Interesting.
Okay.
And Rod, what's your thoughts?
I'd say Hiveguard 3-0.
Yeah, I think pretty unanimous decision here. So then, if Hiveguard, well, whoever wins this, will then go on to play Tempesta in a very tough matchup. But before we talk about that, let's go to the other two matchups. Let's start with Savit Prime versus Niwi Siren. I think for the quarterfinals, this is a juicy one here. Both of these teams have a lot to prove. I guess I'll start. It's this way I get out all the the emotional stuff. I think this will be a very close matchup. I think this will go 5 games. Savrip has to stick to what they do best, get the objective damage done, have very tight defenses, and not give up bad deaths. That's one of their stories of their season, is that they sometimes take deaths they really shouldn't be taking at the worst possible times. Should they run the B-Wing? They haven't made it work in the one game I saw. I think they need to really work it out if they want to run it. It can work. Sagan has done it during the beer leagues. It has shown to work with the Sirens, who are the other B-Wing team. The Sabrips will have to really dig deep here. 5 games, Siren has advantage on faction pick. But I'm going to say Sabrip 3-2 over Niwi. Ska, what do you think?
It's easy. It's Saver 3-0.
Oh, you think it's Sabrip 3-0? Oh, wow.
I think Sagan shuts us down. Better players win the opening. They hit their packs. They completely stomp us into the ground, and we're embarrassed. And yeah, that's it.
Wow, interesting. Let's go to Rod next. Rod, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Savert would 3-0-2. I think if they don't, that's I would be worried about like their next match, like if they dropped a game, even honestly. But I don't think Niwi should feel embarrassed or anything. I think they played a really good season. And if they take a game off Savrip, I think they should be very proud of that. And if they win, that should be. I hope they get very excited about it going into play. I believe Baywatch next,
Yeah.
or most likely Baywatch. So like I don't think they should be embarrassed about anything that they've done this season. They've played really good games and just showing people, you can make an A-wing work. They should be proud of that.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Big Brain, what do you think?
Again, 2 teams I haven't seen enough of. I gotta watch more games. I think that Hod and Lauren and Freakzilla are very scary, and I think that they have a chance to really like shine here. And I feel that Niwi, if they're not careful, could get sweeped.
So you're thinking it's probably a 3-0 sweep for Savrip unless something happens?
Again, I'll be optimistic and say like 3-1.
3-1. Okay. And Maze, I think you're the last one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say that it won't be a sweep. I think Siren is built to challenge teams that run like a 2-2-1 Empire and play very meta, and even strong meta teams like Siren can sort of hit those pressure points with their very interesting setups. So I think they'll take a game off of Savrip, but I think Savrip will probably win the series.
And see,
Probably a 3-1.
And that's my thought too, right? I think it's adaptation is the important part here, and I think that's part of the And that's where I go 3-2. I think that Niwi will win an NR game because you got to adapt to those situations. But we'll see. I mean, everyone seems to have a confidence average to come out of this. But we'll see if Siren can turn it on. That's a game worth watching. I don't think it's been scheduled yet, but hopefully we'll get that soon. And the other matchup we haven't talked about yet is Beck versus Cavaliers Blue. I think this is the other spicy one that everyone's looking for. Cab might be rainless, and they will need to figure out how to stop a very strong Beck team. But as Rod has just pointed out, what team will show up for Beck, and can Beck field a team that will be enough to overcome Cavaliers Blue? You know what? Let's start with Maze first on this. What are your thoughts?
That's a tough call. Both these teams are strong. They tend to perform well in the playoffs. And of course, the X factor is what Rod mentioned here with the availability of players for Beck. I say if Beck has its full lineup, they take this, but it'll be a close series.
So you say Beck. Interesting. Let's go to Scott. What do you think?
I mean, personnel issues are tough. Maybe Rain can give us some insight about whether he's going to fly, but if he doesn't, I'm worried about Cav's chances just because, as Big Brain was saying, Rain is the glue. I want to listen to their comms. It's him shot calling, making the play calls, making those split second decisions that really matter. And then Beck is just loaded with like incredible talent and like focus, impossible to kill, etc. But Foka versus Big Brain should be an excellent support matchup. I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And before I let the two head-to-head guys here give their opinions, I'll give mine. I agree with everything you guys said. It's going to be hard, especially knowing who shows up and whatnot. On paper, I think if both teams field their best team, I have Beck probably winning 3-1. However, I think this game goes 5 games. It's hard to say. But definitely without Rain there being the main shot caller, if he doesn't show up, we don't know this yet. I think it kind of leans, no matter what team Beck fields, I think it leans Beck's way. So I'm gonna say Beck 3-2 on this. Why don't we go to Rod? What do you think in this matchup?
Yeah, I guess in terms of the bullet points, like we'll see who shows up for both teams. I think Knight's form is not anything I'm ever worried about. If Knight's playing, he's going to play very well. But I don't even. We'll see when the match is scheduled and what we'll run.
It's one of those things casters have to say, right? Like I agree with you. Like everyone keeps saying, "Oh, is Knight back to form?" Of course, Knight's back to form. Is he back up to the speed that we expect?
Knight's the best flex player that ever played the game. Like, let's just settle that.
Yeah, no, agree. So, I don't think. I mean, very few people who will argue that, right? And even Knight at his worst is better than 95% of the flex players out there, right? So like that's some of the things we just kind of have to ask: Is he ready? But we kind of all know he is.
But I mean, this will just come down to what each team can field, and I have no idea. Well, so we'll see. Maybe we'll ask Cav to lend us a player or something.
Speaking of Cav lending a Big Rain, what do you think? Who do you think is going to win this matchup?
Well, I think you're all wrong, and we're gonna win 3-0.
3-0.
No, I think that like with the way that Cab has been words. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without pissing off my entire team. I think that Beck has a horrifying lineup, and right Knight again, one of the best player, maybe the best player in the game. I think that we will, at the very least, be able to give them a good run for their money. So I think that this will, no matter what happens, go to 5 games. I don't think we're out of the run. I think we have a chance, but I think it's like slightly more Beck-sided.
Okay, well there you've heard it here. So why don't we close it out with some predictions? Here's the playoff bracket again. You heard everyone's thoughts on the opening rounds. Since Ska was so nice to make this presentation and has his bracket pre-made, Ska, why don't you give us your predictions and your thoughts on the playoffs?
Well, I think Hellporgs wins. They take on Baywatch. Baywatch wins that. Sabrip stomps Siren 3-0. It's embarrassing. I feel bad about it. Baywatch beats them pretty handily, gets to the finals on the bottom side of the bracket. I see Hiveguard stomping TRA. Then pulling up the upset win over Tempesta. I think it's time. I think it's time. I think they're going to do it. I think the longer series goes on, the better Hiveguard goes. So I think Hiveguard's going to do it. I'm hoping Rain plays, and just with the weirdness that's going on with Beck and their lineup, I don't know. I think the coherent CA Blue team might come out over on top. This is a little bit of me trying to make discussion here, but I hope they do. And I think Hiveguard goes on and beats CA Blue and loses to Baywatch in the finals.
I find your bottom half of the bracket interesting. I kind of agree with you on the top half, and I'll go into it with my own predictions. But I find your bottom
I believe in
half
Hiveguard.
In a way, I kind of agree that whoever wins in Tempest and Hiveguard might have an edge going to the finals, but I don't know if they win that. That'll be interesting. Anyway, why don't we go to Maze? Maze, why don't you give us your thoughts on the playoffs and who you think are going to win it? You don't have to give me every single outcome games, but who do you think is going to win it, and do you think of any interesting matchups?
I'd say my bracket would line up with Skaz, except for the part where Hiveguard gets past Tempesta. Assuming we make it to that round, I am looking forward to that matchup. That's a team that we don't really get to scrim against or play against very much, so that will be a new thing for us. We might be able to take a game off of them. Can we be consistent enough to overcome what I think is a skill gap between the two teams and also an experience gap? Unlikely, but I like Ska's optimism. But I would think that Tempesta would. I don't know. Like it's a toss-up to me. If Beck and Tempesta make the semis, I don't know which team gets through to the final. I do think Baywatch gets through on their side. So it's going to be Baywatch versus either Beck or Tempesta. But I don't know. That's why I think this playoff is super exciting because it's, I think, less predictable maybe than some other playoffs have been in previous seasons.
If you had to pick one, who wins? Who wins the playoffs? Who wins it?
I'm going to go with Baywatch. They've just been playing so strong. They're kind of back to traditional Baywatch things, and they're just so good at it. They maybe could be a little bit more consistent. But man, when they're on, they're on fire, and they're just a great team. So yeah, I'd kind of like to see them, finish that story where they dropped out of had to do some retooling, but then just went on a tear and won the whole thing. So I'll go with Baywatch.
Cool. Rod, what are your thoughts on the playoffs? Who do you think is going to win and all that jazz?
I would slightly favor Tempesta over Baywatch, but not just by a little. I think those are the two teams most likely to win it. And if it goes to that, I'd expect a game 5. Maybe 4, but a 3-0 between those two teams would be surprising to me. But I'd favor Tempesta slightly. I know Baywatch 2-0 them and they're round 3, and that's a good momentum going in. But I actually scrimmed them Tempesta before that match, and I thought they were playing poorly. I think they were a little bit rusty. They haven't been playing recently. But that was then. I think they've been grinding a lot more games, and their play has been much sharper from scrimming them more recently,
And
or
that's
scrimming with them. So I think they're gonna bring a stronger game out. So I don't expect them to get 2-0'd or play like they did in round 3 versus Baywatch. And I would favor them slightly over them. But I mean maybe 60% in a head-to-head over Baywatch. So I wouldn't be surprised if Baywatch takes it either. But I would favor Tempesta slightly.
I think that's, and to your point about the momentum, right? I think that's the thing about the playoffs. And some of these teams here need to have that mentality because Tempesta, Baywatch are seasoned vets. Even I always say Blue Sav are seasoned vets in this, and they know that they need to turn it up and grind those series out, and it kind of builds upon itself because you just sharpen your play as the playoffs wear on. So I mean that's a great point of Tempesta, and I'll give my opinion on that. But let's first hear from Big Brain. Big Brain, what's your thoughts? Who do you think win this playoffs, and any predictions that you want to give out?
Let me take a look at this. over Cat and Hellborg, because I really don't know who could win that one. But either way, I think Baywatch is going to win the winner of those games. Unfortunately, Sever Prime. Sever will probably win that. Then Baywatch, yeah, Baywatch is definitely going to make it to the finals. Beck and Blue. Again, either or. I feel Tempest will win over Hiveguard because they are very scary. And then Tempest will win. If it's Beck, I feel like it'll be a close game, but Tempest will win overall. And then Tempest versus Baywatch, I honestly have no clue. That could go either way.
50-50. Okay. For me, I kind of agree. The top side, I don't see Baywatch giving up too much there. They'll probably mostly 3-0s, maybe a 3-1 here and there. Maybe 3-1 against whoever wins Saber Prime and Niwi Siren, unless one of those teams really turns it on for the game against Baywatch. The bottom is a lot more open, in my opinion. I do think Tempesta beats Hiveguard maybe in a 3-1-ish kind of setup. I still believe Backstreet Boys go forward against Tempesta. And I know you said your piece on that, Rod, but I think if you guys got your team together and you really drilled down, I know what you're saying
Look,
about Tempa. Go ahead.
If we had what I consider our best lineup, we're a contender for the championship.
Exactly.
And if we can practice that lineup, I would consider us favorites. But that hasn't happened once this season, and I don't see it happening now.
But for
so there's no reason for me to say I don't want to pretend like our team's going to do really great when we're practicing like a third to a tenth of what other teams are. That's just not realistic expectation of like the level of play people are going to bring. Like all these other teams are playing way more than us. Why should we expect to beat them?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, you might be right, but sometimes it's just a catalyst moment. And for the Backstreet Boys, there was last season they had a little bit of a run-in with the team they eventually beat to get to the finals, right? And that really there was a catalyst moment for them before that really drove them to get ready for that match. And I think that for me, I think that happens here for you guys. I know what you're saying. Real life happens and whatnot. But Knight is also the kind of guy, and there's a lot of players on your team that are driven to win. And I think there's be a moment where someone says, "No, fuck this. We're winning this, and we're going to go forward." I think you guys beat CA Blue, as I said before. Part of me wants to say you hit that catalyst moment. You go up against Tempesta. It goes 5 games, and in a way I want to buck the trend here and say you guys beat Tempesta in 5 games, 3-2. I know what you're saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And Backstreet versus Baywatch goes 5 games. Man, you know what? You all said Baywatch or Tempesta. I'm gonna say Backstreet goes all the way to the finals. I think something happens here, catalyst moment. You guys make it all the way to the finals and win this in a very exciting affair. Part of me wants to say Baywatch, and if everyone else didn't say Baywatch, I probably would have said it. But no, I'm gonna say Backstreet in a very exciting comeback fashion. I think you guys find that moment and it happens.
If we manage to pull it off, you can gloat.
I think what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have this Luma moment where someone's gonna clip this and then say, "Rebel, you're a fucking idiot."
I would say for the top half too. Like I think Savrip has a reasonable chance to upset Baywatch. I think if there are 5 players or whoever they field like can be hot at the same time,
it's gonna
they
happen.
can play really well. I just think their biggest problem seems to be like
themselves.
One or well, I mean that's true of every team. But like usually when I see them in matches where they lose, like 1 or 2 players just quite weren't doing what they needed to. Like something went wrong, and it's like all 5 of you just quite weren't there. If I think if they're like on top of things, all 5 of them, I think they're capable of beating Baywatch. So I don't want to put Baywatch as like a shoe-in in the final. Like there's a real chance they could upset them if they're all being sharp at the same time.
Because I said it when we were reviewing the team, right? And I guess I have the opposite problem, or the same problem as you. Is like I want to believe in Saver Prime. They're of course they're my team and they'll always be my team. But knowing the X factors, I in a way I don't want to pick them to get over Baywatch because they know what they need to do and I want them to do what they need to do because that team is extremely talented and they can put the screws to Baywatch if they're ready. So I absolutely agree with you. And I'm hoping that the Savrip team hears this and makes it to the very first finals for our team because we're one of the oldest teams still playing and we have never been to a final in any tournament. This would be the nice one to finally get there and show that Savrip's history is worthy of being talked about in the annals of Squadrons championships. Okay, let me just go over the scheduled match. Get final thoughts from everyone. We'll close out this cast. Again, Help Works tomorrow, 9:30 p.m. We don't have a caster yet. The 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We don't have a caster yet. We're gonna work on that. Friday, Orange Squad versus Laser Rangers, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and then at 11 p.m. the Striders take on Cavern Angels Jade. Sunday, 4 p.m. Hive Guard takes on TRA. But stay tuned to announcements. I'm sure more games will get scheduled. Things will happen. Let me go back here to the cast screen. Guys, first off, I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I really appreciate the 2 hours we just put into this. Scott, thank you for making the PowerPoint. Green, if you're out there, thank you for doing the stats. I appreciate it. Let's give you guys a chance. Closing thoughts on the playoffs or anything you want to talk about SCL. Let's start with you, Scott. Any closing thoughts before we go off air?
No, I'm excited. I've never been in the playoffs before. This is my first time. We narrowly lost out last time because of RPI stupidity, as Maze may tell you about. I'm not salty. You're salty.
What do you mean?
You should be salty. It was you should have been in the playoffs last season. So, you and Hiveguard should have been there.
But it's funny you say that, but then the Kindred Striders end up upsetting their match and going forward, right? So I think, and the same thing here. A lot of teams in that bubble had a right to make a case to be there. But no,
Quick question, Maze. Did we lose? Did Hiveguard or Siren lose a single get 2-0'd at all against any of the playoff teams from last year? The four that made it above us.
I can't remember which four.
The answer
those
is no.
were.
the answer's no.
I don't think we played all of them, but yeah, they didn't beat us to advance. That's
Just Orange took games off of us, and I think we beat them all.
Well, hopefully you guys have a much. In your first match, you have a good experience and you do well here. And it's gonna be a very tough matchup. Maze, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm excited for the playoffs, and I'm really excited that the organizers decided to open up a challenger bracket. One of the issues in previous years has been, teams, just kind of feeling left out of the playoffs. It's kind of, it's hard to get excited about the playoffs if you're not, you don't have some kind of a stake in the playoffs. And so I think this is really great for all the teams.
Excellent. Let's go to Big Brain. Closing thoughts.
I think that this is going to be a really awesome set of games. It's like no matter who plays who, there's not going to be like a game that's like, oh yeah, that's going to be done in like 2 seconds. I think they're all going to be fun ones, no matter what happens. And I'm excited to see everyone play.
And Rod, closing thoughts from you.
Nothing really different than what people have said. I'm excited about the games. Hopefully, I'll try to cast some of them.
I think all of us are hoping to cast some of them, right?
Yeah, I'll try to make an effort. I know I can't cast. You said one match is tomorrow. I won't be able to do that, but I'll try to cast the others and
Excellent.
make it the playoffs try to make it as fun as we can have.
Yeah,
but I'm excited for the games.
I think tomorrow was a tough one because that's when we're all of us are practicing, right? And a lot of us, because it's the playoffs, don't want to give up our practice time.
I wish I was practicing. I have to travel for some event I'm attending. But I'll be back later that night. But I won't be able to cast the match.
Okay. So for me, this is the closest season I think we've had in a long time in terms of skill. A lot of teams, even in Group C and D, can make a case next season to be champion caliber teams, especially if they're continuing their trajectory. This has been a very exciting season for me, even though it's been disappointing for us, the Kindred Striders. As a watcher and as a caster, I think some of the games have been amazing to be a part of. So I'm hoping the playoffs will be even more exciting. I know last season's playoffs had probably 1 or 2 stories games, but otherwise it was a steamroll across the board until the finals. So I'm hoping we have a lot more closer games. But I'm excited. We are finishing up season 8. I'm hoping we all get to season 9 with just as many teams, if not more. The game, everyone keeps saying it's dying, but we keep seeing new people come in. So I'm hoping this playoffs will show people that it's worth it to put the effort in. Like a team like Cavern and Jade came out of nowhere. They're all solo cures that came together, and now they're having the opportunity to fight for a championship here. So I'm hoping that this will be a great playoffs to cast and be a part of, and that this was a fun season. And this community is great, and I'm hoping we keep it up going forward. So with that, before we close it out, again, we have our games coming up this week. Friday night flights for anyone, don't forget, we're going to be doing another one of these with the EU pilots at the same time as Friday night flights. So while you're flying, maybe just have us on and we'll go through this again. Probably same talking points, but I don't know, the EU players have a different perspective. It's interesting to talk to us, the North American players, because we all know each other very well, but the EU players have their own perspectives. I'm interested to see how they predict it. So it's worth coming back and seeing what they do. But if not, good luck to all of you guys in your playoff matches. Good luck to everyone out there. Thank you for being part of the chat today. I really appreciate it. And I think, this was a fun cast. Again, thank you guys for being a part of this. And hopefully we will be back here for Season 9 and another playoff preview. So, again, have a good night, everyone. Good luck. And this has been an SCF production of the SCL Season 8 playoffs. This is Roll Pilot and team signing off. Good night, everyone.
Good night.